Klay Thompson is officially joining the Miami Heat, and NBA players can't believe it. He's teaming up with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bam Adebayo, and reactions are already pouring in across the league. But one reaction to Klay's move is getting the most attention. Let me break it down. The move came fast. Reports broke that the Dallas Mavericks announced they were buying out the final year of Klay Thompson's contract. That was a contract that was due to pay him $17.5 million for the 2026-27 season. Within minutes, ESPN's Shams Charania had the follow-up everyone was waiting for. He posted that Klay Thompson is expected to sign with the Miami Heat after he clears waivers, upon a contract buyout with the Dallas Mavericks. Not hours later, not the next day, minutes. The financial terms landed just as fast. He'll earn $13 million on a 2-year deal, including a player option, per Charania. That's a steep discount from the $17.5 million Dallas was on the hook for. But for Thompson, money was clearly not the point anymore. The speed of it all is what caught people off guard. Thompson clearly already had his preferred destination in mind when negotiating the buyout, with word he planned to join the Heat, coming mere minutes after the news went public. This wasn't a guy testing the open market. This was a guy who knew exactly where he wanted to land, before he was even technically a free agent, and Miami wasn't playing coy either. Thompson had been linked to the Heat for virtually the entire offseason, or at least since Miami finalized its move for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the Heat were said to be just as interested as he was. The only thing standing in the way was Dallas. That's because the only real question was whether the Mavericks would be willing to let him go, since they had hoped to find a trade partner for Thompson, but the $17.5 million owed on the final year of his contract made that virtually impossible. Nobody wanted to absorb that number for a bench piece, so Dallas ate it themselves. Ultimately, the Mavs opted to eat the money and let Thompson go where he wanted. That's a franchise writing off over $17 million just to send a respected veteran somewhere he'd actually be happy. It tells you something about where Thompson's standing inside that organization had landed, and also about how much goodwill he still had, even on his way out the door. Once the news hit, the reactions started pouring in, and not just from fans. NBA insider Shams Charania's post triggered instant responses across team channels, betting circles, and locker rooms. A Heat-focused fan account went as far as posting that nobody would be beating the roster in the East, and the sentiment spread. Sports personality accounts started framing this as a landscape-altering move for the entire conference. One recurring theme in the reaction cycle: people zeroing in on Miami's need for shooting and how directly Thompson's arrival addressed it. Then there was the joke that seemed to hit hardest, coming from sports radio host Mark Grandy. He noted the irony that Klay and Giannis are now teammates, just like the Warriors always wanted. A nod to years of speculation that Golden State would somehow find a way to pair its championship shooter with the two-time MVP. Warriors adjacent voices weren't laughing quite as easily. Warriors insider Sam Esfandiari posted that Joe has got to be livid seeing Klay, Wiggins, Giannis in South Beach together, referring to Golden State's governor watching 3 players the franchise had either lost or chased land on the same roster. That comment picked up traction fast because it wasn't just about Thompson, it was about a front office that pursued a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade for years but failed to emerge as one of the finalists. For the Greek Freak this summer, despite boasting up to 4 tradable first-round picks. So while some were framing the move as pure basketball logic, Miami needed shooting. Thompson can still shoot. The sharper reaction across league circles was about what it represented. A franchise that once housed the greatest shooting backcourt in league history was now watching pieces of that era scatter to a division rival's Eastern Conference nightmare. Giannis, Wiggins, and Klay all under one roof, all in South Beach. Even Dallas's front office made sure to mark the occasion publicly. Team president Masai Ujiri released a statement, calling Thompson one of the great players and competitors of his generation, adding that the organization felt tremendous respect for everything he'd accomplished and wished him well moving forward. It read like the kind of send-off usually reserved for a franchise legend, not a guy who'd fallen out of the rotation months earlier. That's the piece that made this whole sequence stand out. A player who'd clearly regressed on the court still generated this level of urgency and this level of respect from a front office that had every incentive to let him walk quietly. Nobody buys out $17.5 million for a guy who's an afterthought. To understand why this landing spot mattered so much, You have to look at what the 2 years in Dallas actually looked like, because they were rough. Thompson arrived in Dallas in the summer of 2024 through a complicated sign-and-trade. He joined a Mavs team fresh off a trip to the NBA Finals, added to help Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving chase a title. That was the pitch. Instant contender, immediate impact. A real shot at a 5th championship ring. Then everything changed. The Mavericks' tenure with Thompson was dramatically altered by the shocking trade of Luka Doncic, a move that reshaped the entire direction of the franchise almost overnight. Suddenly, Thompson wasn't playing for a championship core. He was playing for a team in transition, trying to figure out its identity around a completely different set of pieces. The on-court numbers told the story of decline. In his first season with Dallas, Thompson averaged 14 points while shooting what was then a career-low 41.2% from the field. That was already a signal, but last season it got worse. He fell out of the Mavericks' starting rotation midway through the year, and in 69 appearances, he averaged 11.7 points and set career lows in overall field goal percentage at 39.3% and three-point percentage at 38.3%. Those numbers matter because of who Thompson used to be. This was a guy known for one of the purest shooting strokes in league history. And now he was posting career-low efficiency across the board. His long-range prowess had even started to desert him, which made the other flaws in his game tougher to ignore. He wasn't as dogged a defender anymore, and he couldn't score off the dribble like he once could. The benching stung in a specific way too. Jason Kidd shifted Thompson to the bench after 7 games, which made for a delicate situation considering Dallas promised him a starting spot when it made its pitch during the 2024 offseason. A guy who'd started for basically his entire prime was suddenly a reserve on a rebuilding roster, watching a coaching change and a front office overhaul happen around him. Analysts had tried to frame the signing charitably from the start. The Mavs knew they weren't getting Thompson at his peak when they signed him. They presumably envisioned him occupying a role similar to Ray Allen during his 2-year run with the Miami Heat. And toward the end of his Boston Celtics tenure, when Allen remained a capable three-point specialist, shooting 37.5% from beyond the arc in his final season. The comparison made sense on paper. It just didn't hold up once Thompson's shooting started slipping too. By the time the buyout came, Dallas had moved on in almost every sense, with Dallas pivoting toward a youth movement led by reigning Rookie of the Year, Cooper Flagg. The Mavericks had little need to keep Thompson on the roster for the 2026-27 season and opted to reach a buyout well before training camp began to give him the opportunity to sign with a contender. The front office wasn't trying to squeeze value out of him anymore. They were trying to do right by a guy whose window with the franchise had closed. That's echoed in just how much turnover had already swept through the roster. The buyout was the latest in a major retooling of the Dallas roster. His departure left just 5 players from opening day 2 years earlier, along with a new front office, led by Masai Ujiri and general manager Mike Schmitz, and a new coach in Dusty May, who replaced Jason Kidd. Practically nothing about that Dallas team resembled the one Thompson signed up for, so when word got out that Thompson was heading to a contender instead of limping through a lost season on a rebuilding roster, it read as more than a transaction. It read as an escape hatch, one that both sides seemed relieved to open. Miami's motivation is where this story gets interesting, because the Heat weren't just taking a flyer on a name from the past, they had a specific hole to fill. And Thompson happened to be one of the very few players left on the market who could fill it. Everything traces back to one trade. Miami's offseason had already been defined by landing Giannis Antetokounmpo from Milwaukee, a move that reshaped the entire roster around him. To get that deal done, the Heat sent Tyler Herro, Kel'el Ware, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Kasparas Jakuchionis, the number 13 pick in the 2026 NBA Draft. First-round picks in 2031 and 2033, a 2030 pick swap, and a 2033 second-round pick to the Bucks. That's a staggering amount of draft capital and rotation talent to give up in one swing. And notably, Herro, Miami's leading scorer and primary shot creator, was in that package, which meant Miami didn't just gain a superstar. It lost its shooting and its shot creation in the same move. That gap became the story of Miami's summer. Miami's lack of depth after the big trade included a clear need for additional playmaking, and that remained true even as the offseason progressed. Analysts kept flagging the same issue. The Heat had a two-time MVP and one of the league's most versatile bigs in Bam Adebayo, but not enough shooters to space the floor around them. Meanwhile, Miami had already locked in one other key piece. From the last trade cycle, the Miami Heat agreed with Andrew Wiggins to a 3-year, $64 million contract. After acquiring Giannis Antetokounmpo, solidifying one of the NBA's best defensive cores alongside Bam Adebayo. Wiggins had come to Miami originally through the trade that sent Jimmy Butler to Golden State, and he'd become a steady piece of the roster ever since. That's the group Thompson was walking into. Giannis, Adebayo, and Wiggins, a defense-first core that desperately needed outside shooting to actually space the floor for its superstar. The fit made sense on paper the moment rumors started swirling. Even with the decline in Dallas, Thompson still had something left in the tank that Miami needed. Thompson isn't the player he once was, but he can still knock down deep shots, as he shot 39.3% from 3 last year. That number, paired with his gravity as a shooter that defenses still have to respect, made him a low-cost, low-risk swing for exactly the hole Miami had created for itself. Analysts framed it plainly. Thompson provides Miami with an elite shooter whom they can kick out to for three-pointers, something he's well known for from his days as part of the Splash Brothers with Stephen Curry in Golden State. That reputation, even years removed from his peak, still carries weight around the league. The timing lined up perfectly too. While Thompson isn't the two-way force he was at his peak, his shooting acumen is something the Heat desperately need on their roster after trading Tyler Herro away in the Giannis deal. Miami had a specific, obvious need, and Thompson had a specific, obvious skill still intact. It wasn't a splashy reunion story. It was a transaction built on mutual necessity. Not everyone thought the fit solved everything, though. Some analysis pointed out that although Antetokounmpo will handle the ball and is a solid playmaker, there's still a need for a true point guard, with Davion Mitchell set to start in the backcourt. Someone who stands out more as a defender and a three-point shooter than a facilitator. Even though Adebayo can make some plays himself, Thompson fixes the shooting problem. He doesn't fix the ball-handling one. That's the piece of this puzzle Miami will still have to solve separately. Still, the timeline says everything about how much both sides wanted this. From the first rumor to the buyout to the reported agreement, the entire sequence moved in a matter of hours. Exploring the open market apparently didn't last very long for Thompson, as he'll pack his bags for South Beach and join the Eastern Conference for the first time in his NBA career. There's a layer to this story that goes beyond basketball fit. It's about the Warriors' dynasty scattering across the league one piece at a time, and how the people who lived through that era are still talking to each other. Start with Golden State itself. The Warriors had spent real effort trying to reconstruct pieces of their old core. They had pursued a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade for years, but failed to emerge as one of the finalists this summer. And they similarly had intentions to reunite with Thompson, who himself welcomed the idea of returning to the Bay Area franchise after leaving as a free agent in 2024. So Thompson wanting to go back to Golden State wasn't some rumor invented after the fact. He'd been open about it. And now, instead of returning to the franchise where he won 4 championships, he's teaming up with the exact superstar Golden State couldn't land, on a roster that already includes another former Warriors piece in Wiggins. That's the layer that made the Esfandiari post land the way it did. It wasn't just a joke about Miami's roster. It was pointing at a front office that watched 3 players who all wore Golden State colors at different points end up together somewhere else entirely. And this all comes on the heels of something else that had already put Thompson back in the headlines that summer: his back and forth with Kevin Durant. Weeks before the buyout news, Durant had waded into an online debate comparing his old championship Warriors teams to the current Philadelphia 76ers roster, arguing that Philadelphia's collection of talent was more stacked on paper. Durant rattled off accolades for Joel Embiid, Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey, and LeBron James, then turned to his old teammate. He wrote that Thompson was, in his words, someone who had never been an MVP candidate in nothing, despite averaging 22 points a game during that historic 73-win season. Thompson didn't let it slide. He posted a screenshot of Durant's comment to his Instagram story, tagged him, and fired back with a short, pointed question about why Durant was even bringing up his full name like that. It read as playful more than bitter, but it spread fast across league circles anyway, because it was two champions publicly relitigating their own dynasty's legacy in real time. Draymond Green got pulled into it too, joking about Durant using a burner mentality with his comment, and later saying on his own podcast that he didn't buy Durant's premise about the 76ers being better on paper than that Warriors core at all. The reason this matters for the Thompson to Miami story isn't the beef itself, it's the timing. Thompson's next chapter was already being shaped by conversations about his Warriors legacy, about what he was or wasn't during that era. Right as he was preparing to leave the only two organizations he'd known as a professional besides Golden State, he was headed into a locker room with zero connection to that dynasty, walking away from the never an MVP candidate noise and into a fresh context where his job description is simple: make shots, space the floor, help a two-time MVP win games. There's also a quieter footnote in all of this. Before Thompson ever got to Dallas, before any of this played out, he'd already spent 13 seasons with Golden State, missing 2 of them entirely to devastating knee and Achilles injuries. He spent his first 13 seasons with Golden State, although he missed 2 entire seasons with knee and Achilles injuries, and he missed the playoffs just twice in the 11 seasons he actually played there. That run is the backdrop against which every one of these Durant jokes, every one of these buyout headlines gets read by fans. It's not just a guy got bought out, it's one of the most decorated shooters of his generation trying to figure out where he still fits. So where does this actually leave things heading into the season? Thompson enters this chapter of his career at 36 years old, stepping into a conference he's never played in before. Now, at 36 years old, one of the greatest shooters the game has ever seen will join the Heat and add depth to a roster that sorely needed it after the franchise parted ways with many of its assets to acquire Antetokounmpo. That's the honest framing of it. Not a savior, a depth piece with a resume most players would kill for. But the resume still means something in that locker room. Thompson won 4 NBA titles alongside Stephen Curry and Draymond Green with the Warriors. And that kind of postseason experience is exactly what a retooled Miami roster is looking to plug in around its new superstar. Whatever the box score says these days, players who've been through 4 championship runs bring something coaches can't manufacture in practice. The Mavericks front office understood that too, even as they moved on. Ujiri's parting words leaned into that same idea, a career worth respecting. Regardless of how the final chapter in Dallas played out, it's rare for a front office to go out of its way to publicly honor a player they just paid to leave, and that alone says something about how the league still views Thompson even in decline. The schedule has already set up some storylines nobody can ignore. It won't take long for the Warriors to face him and his new squad. Golden State hosts Miami on No. 5 at Chase Center. Thompson walking back into the building where he built his entire legacy. This time wearing Heat colors is going to be one of the most talked about nights of the early season, no matter how he's playing by then. There's also the matter of just how different this chapter is geographically and competitively. He'll pack his bags for South Beach and join the Eastern Conference for the first time in his NBA career, which means new opponents, a new arena atmosphere, and a matchup slate he's genuinely never seen as a pro. 16 years in. That's not something most veterans get to experience. As for what Miami actually gets on the floor, the honest expectation, according to most analysts, isn't a return to peak form. Miami won't necessarily need Thompson to rediscover his prime form. With Antetokounmpo and Adebayo anchoring the Heat, the veteran can potentially fill a more specialized role as an experienced floor spacer with extensive postseason experience. That's the job. Stand in the corner, make the defense pay for helping off him, and let Giannis and Adebayo do the heavy lifting. The bigger picture reaction across the league says just as much about where the NBA stands right now as it does about Thompson individually, a 4-time champion getting bought out by one team and immediately snapped up by a conference contender, all within the same news cycle, is the kind of story that ripples through locker rooms, reminding every star watching that even legacies built on decades of production can turn into trade value conversations within a couple of seasons. It's also a reminder of how quickly modern rosters get rebuilt around a single blockbuster trade, with players like Thompson serving as the connective tissue between one era and the next. For Miami, the front office now has its two-time MVP, its defensive anchor in Adebayo, its steady wing production from Wiggins, and its new floor-spacing veteran in Thompson. The exact shape of roster they set out to build the moment they agreed to trade for Giannis. Whether it's enough to compete at the top of the East immediately is still an open question, especially with the ball handling gap analysts keep flagging. But the shooting problem that plagued Miami's roster the moment Harrell left town now has, at minimum, a proven answer walking through the door. And for Thompson, this is a fresh start built entirely on his own terms, a buyout. He pushed for a destination he wanted and a roster that needed exactly what he still has left to give. 16 years into a Hall of Fame career, that's not a bad way to write the next chapter.